an hour of your time when I know this week's a busy week for everybody with the kind of the academic year coming to a close and you kind of shifting gears in your programs to a summer season. So I appreciate everybody's time today. My name is Olivia Nunes. I am the Manager of Childcare Policy and Funding Development here at the Region of Peel. And today we are going to be talking about the implementation of the rolling top-up component of the funding model. We did come to you in May to kind of go over a little bit about, okay, what is the rolling top-up and how is it calculated? And today we're really going to be focused on how it's going to be implemented over the next coming months. And that will be sort of how we're going to spend most of our time today. So here we are in June. I know you guys have a lot going on and are hopefully taking in as many World Cup games as you can. And so I hope you enjoy that as well. And without further delay, we're going to jump right into our content. So as usual, this meeting is going to be recorded. The presentation will be shared with the sector. Everyone's microphones are currently muted. You can unmute yourself during the Q&A session if you'd like to ask a question. In terms of other ways to ask questions, there's a Q&A feature which I will get to later today. And you are also able to send any questions to the Early Years System Division email box or contact your EYS and they will help you and guide you in the right direction. So in terms of how to use the Q&A feature, just for those of you who might be not as familiar with it, what you're seeing on the screen is based on like a Microsoft Teams app view. And you'll see on the top there's a Q&A icon. So if you want to ask a question, you click on that icon, and then that side panel will kind of pop out. And then there where it says ask a question, you can type in whatever question you'd like. If you see other questions and you're like, oh, I was thinking the same thing, you can upvote it or thumbs up it. And that just lets us know like, oh, there are a lot of providers asking this question. Maybe we need to clarify this area, or maybe we need to develop a Q&A on this topic. So it lets us know kind of what is more of a question that applies to many people versus maybe there's a couple questions that might be provider specific. Alternatively, you can also raise your hand and just ask the question the good old-fashioned way. And you do that by about 2 icons over. You see the raised icon, and that is, you click on that, and then your hand will go up, and then we'll call on you, and you can unmute yourself. In regards to today's agenda, so like I said, in May, we walked you through what the rolling top-up was, how it was calculated, and what it might mean for your funding, your 2026 funding allocation. Today, we're really going to be focusing on how we're going to be implementing this in Peel. So what is our plan to roll it out? How are we going to keep you updated throughout the course of that plan? What is the process for providers appealing their results, and some key next steps as well. And then, like I said, towards the end, we'll also have our typical regular open kind of Q&A session. So now I'm going to pass it along to Debbie Berjou, and she's going to help kick us off with the first part.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Debbie Berjou, and I'm an advisor in the Childcare Policy and Funding Development team. And so, like Olivia said, I'm happy to walk you through the next few slides to give you a bit of a refresher and some of the key information we shared with you back in the May teleconference. So moving on to the next slide. This slide provides, it shares with you the 4 basic steps of how the rolling top-up is calculated. So you can see in step 1, the first thing we need to do is confirm your 2025 actual eligible program cost. And this is done by reviewing your 2025 CWELC reconciliation package. Once that's done, we move on to step 2, where we'll compare your actual eligible 2025 cost to your 2025 benchmark funding. If your actual eligible cost is higher, this takes us to step 3, where we'll convert that gap to a percentage. And that percentage is what we will be calling your rolling top-up ratio. Now, once that ratio is calculated, step 4, we'll take that ratio and we'll apply it to your 2026 benchmark funding. and that'll determine your rolling top-up funding allocation for 2026. And so this slide just provides a visual overview of how the funding is structured in GovGrants in 2026. So on the left-hand side, that's what you'll currently see in GovGrants, just a 2026 um, benchmark funding. Then we're also providing you with a rollover of your 2025 top-up funding, which could include legacy or growth or both if you had both in 2025. Also, if you expanded in 2026, you may see 2026 growth funding in here as well. And then finally, you'll have your amount in lieu of profit or surplus. And so, the column on the right side highlights the two orange box that's going to change. And the main takeaway here is that the rolling top-up amount will replace your 2025 top-up funding, so your legacy or your growth. So instead of separate top-ups, you'll now see one rolling top-up built into your funding. Everything else pretty much remains the same, except for the amount in lieu of profit or surplus. That will get updated based on the revised rolling top-up allocation. Okay, so now for the new and important information. How are we going to be implementing the rolling top-up? So before we proceed with that, like over the last few months, we did meet with providers to gather input, understand system preferences, and explore how implementation could affect your business. So thank you so much to those of you that participated. What we heard from you is that one, you'd like to get final funding amounts as soon as possible. And then secondly, if we need to reduce your funding, that we do that earlier so that you have time to budget and plan and adapt to your new funding allocation. So we have considered this in our rollout plan. So based on the provider program data, financial information, and provider feedback, what we've done is we have 3 implementation pathways. And so you may fall into one of these pathways. There's the general pathway, the provisional pathway, and the incomplete submission pathway. So essentially the general pathway, most of the system will fit into this group, and it requires like one final allocation adjustment. The second pathway is the provisional pathway, and here just 2 adjustments, one based on the reconciliation information that you submitted, and then a second adjustment based on final approved reconciliation. And then the third pathway is for providers whose financial reporting was either outstanding or incomplete by the deadline. And these providers will get one final adjustment later in the year. So I'll pass it over to Olivia. She's going to take you through the next slides to provide you with some further information about these pathways.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay. So like Debbie said, the general pathway is where most of the providers on the line, probably where you mostly land. You will land in this pathway if you submitted your reconciliation on time and if your reported 2025 CWELC costs are essentially fully spent or higher. If you had significant underspending, then you will not be in this pathway. So if you spent either all or more than your CWELC funding, then we're anticipating that your top-up, your rolling top-up allocation will go up. In terms of when, so essentially what needs to take place first is we need to complete the reconciliation reviews. So once your reconciliation reviews, reconciliation submission's been reviewed by the region, if you've answered any questions or if there's any, confirmations that need to take place, once that work's been finalized, then that is when we will calculate your rolling top up based on that final reconciliation amount, and that you'll probably see that adjustment. They'll start in late summer and progress into early fall, right? In terms of when you can expect it to happen. So, well, you know what? I'll get into it in the next slide. So let's go to the next one. So for provisional, so if you are on this pathway, you're going to get 2 adjustments. The first one is you're going to see it very quickly. You'll get a communication in July, and you'll see that in August, we're going to change your allocation. And it'll be reflective of whatever you submitted and reported as part of your reconciliation information, your fare, right? That information has not yet been reviewed by the region, but in order to give you more time to adjust, we're using it as a provisional adjustment. This will help you plan and make any, required budget changes earlier in the year when you have more time to do so. These are for providers who reported underspending of more than $5,000 compared to their 2025 CWELC submission. So again, if you submitted your 2025 reconciliation in the fair, if what you've submitted showed that, oh, I had, whatever, we'll say $10,000 of underspending as an example, then you will most likely be in this pathway, and we'll be making that provisional change. You'll start to see your payment amount adjusted starting in August. Then once we review your reconciliation submission and finalize it, if we need to make any changes, we'll make any changes or updates, and then that'll just become your final rolling top-up amount. And this is to, again, give you more time to plan and budget. The final pathway is for the folks on the line who have either incomplete or have not yet submitted their fares yet. You are also going to get one top-up adjustment. It'll happen not more in the fall, so not late summer. It's definitely going to happen later because the other two groups, they're going to kind of get seen first, right? Or we're going to be implementing them first, right? So you will be have your allocations updated based on your final approved reconciliation submission, right? And what you could expect is, again, once you submit, if you see there, oh, I spent most all, right, of my 2025 funding. So what you could maybe anticipate is an increase when we eventually get to your file. If what you've reported shows that you have some underspending, you should probably be planning for a decrease based on that reported underspending. The main kind of consideration here is that unfortunately you will have less time to make these adjustments because we haven't yet submitted or received your submission. So we're still waiting on some information from you. So with that, let's get into a little bit of the timing, right? So essentially, we're going to be prioritizing files, and then trying to get through as many as we can over the next coming months. So your providers are going to be reviewed earlier in that process. If you have the more of these criteria you have, the more chances that you're going to be reviewed earlier on. So if you had a high funding amount or high amounts of legacy or growth top up in 2025, you are probably going to be on the reviewed first. If you're a multi-site provider, so there's, we're doing some work with, allocating across different sites, right? You're going to be reviewed first. If you serve both CWELC and school-age children, therefore your fare, and your reconciliation is going to have an element of proration between your CWELC eligible costs and your school-age costs. You're also going to be reviewed first. So we were trying to, with these, kind of do the ones that are maybe more complex, that might be more time consuming or have a high, let's say, amount, a high dollar value, so that so because they might be a little bit more complicated. So we're going to start with some of those ones first. If you have only one or two of these, you might be in the middle. If you have none of these, you might be towards the end of our prioritization list. Okay, and in terms of just to kind of pull it all together, so there are 3 pathways. For the most part, for all of you who have submitted, you should be able to guess which pathway you are on based on what does your reconciliation show right now. So if you reported either either fully spent, or maybe you spent a little bit more than your allocation, then you're probably on that general pathway. You're going to get one adjustment that'll be based on your approved reconciliation data, and that'll take place late summer, early fall. Um, if you reported underspending of more than $5,000, you're going to be in that second pathway, that provisional pathway. You're going to get two adjustments. The first one is going to be based on self-reported data. It's whatever you gave to us, like, April 30th, right? And you're going to see that change in August as part of your August payment. Then in the meantime, we'll be reviewing financial reconciliation submissions. And once those are approved, if there are any changes between what was originally submitted and maybe, clarifications or anything that need to be changed as part of your final submission, any of those, that'll be implemented late summer, early fall. This is the first time we're doing this. I don't know how many changes we're going to have, right? But there could be some. So we just want to let you know that the provisional, there might be some variation between your provisional and your final submission. And then the last pathway is for people who are incomplete, providers who did not submit on time. You are also going to have just one final adjustment, and that'll be based on whatever your approved reconciliation data is. You're going to get looked at more towards the end of the year, the last quarter of the year, mid to late fall, right? But we're going to be trying to get through the reconciliation submissions as quickly as we can so that we can implement this as quickly as we can. But this is a little bit of a summary of our plan in terms of who will be reviewed when. Okay, and now to talk about the next piece about how you're going to be kept up to date, I'm going to pass it back to Debbie.
Thanks, Olivia. So we know how important it is for you to have clear and correct information to work with. And so over the next few slides, what we're going to do is we're going to share a plan with you. We'll share with you how we're going to, our plan to share information with you and how we're going to keep you updated and what supports you may need as we roll out the rolling top-up updates. So over to the next slide. In mid-July, you will receive a memo that shares our rolling top-up implementation approach. The memo will also share with you what pathway you fall into, so whether it's general, provisional, or incomplete. If you fall into the provisional pathway at the end of July, so this is about a week before that adjustment in GovGrants, you will be able to view your updated GovGrant award with your provisional rolling top-up amount. But this is only if you fall into that provisional pathway. And so when you receive your provisional rolling top-up update, your award in GovGrants, it's going to look a little bit different. So your legacy and your growth top-up for 2025, so those budget categories will be zeroed out. And so you'll no longer see an amount in there. And what will happen is we're creating a rolling top-up budget category, and so your provisional rolling top-up amount will be populated there. So that's a new budget category that you'll see for 2026. And so, just as a reminder, your provisional rolling top-up amount, it is a temporary amount because it is based on your self-reported data. Once we review your reconciliation package and it's approved, that amount, to Olivia's point, could change if there's a change in your reconciliation. And so once your reconciliation is final, you will receive your final rolling top-up update. And like I said, if the cost stays the same after we review your reconciliation, the amount you see in that budget category will also stay the same. And if we make changes, you'll see the changes in that category as well. We recognize that the rolling top-up is new and that it will change or tweak. It will require changes or tweaks to your budgets and your planning. So to support you through the implementation of the rolling top-up, your EYS, as always, will be able to check on you after you receive your July memo to go through any questions that you have. And also, we'll be sending out a second memo when we confirm your rolling top-up amount. We've also heard that you like to see your memos in GovGrant. So what we'll do is once you have your final memo and your final rolling top-up amount, we will upload that memo into GovGrants, into the 2026 CWELC Award, so you'll be able to access it at any point. So let's move on to appeals. So can you appeal the RTOP decision? Yes, you can. But it needs to be based on certain criteria. And so our plan is to assess appeals on a case-by-case basis based on the information that you provide. Our goal is to review appeals in a fair and consistent and transparent manner that aligns with the CWELC and rolling top-up policies. So what can you appeal? So you can appeal any rolling top-up decisions if, there's a calculation error, or if there's a program data error, or if there's new or corrected financial information. And so what we will not do is, we will not consider appeals in cases where you just don't agree with the decision. So it does need to have some grounds for appeal. And so, we will not consider appeals where where you disagree with the intent of the provincial appeal regional policy, or if providers are dissatisfied with the rolling top-up outcome, or whether, you're comparing the funding received to other providers. Those are not grounds for appeal. You know, some additional grounds that we won't consider, whether just poor planning or spending decisions where, you may have had a recent opportunity to adjust your budget. And then finally, if you're forecasting or making assumptions based on hypothetical expenditures without any verifiable documentation, those also are not grounds for appeal. So just to emphasize that is if you do want to appeal the decision, you must be able to support your request by explaining your appeal in detail and providing valid supporting documentation. Only then it'll be considered. So we will share more detailed information about our appeals process in late July. And like I said, appeals must have a valid reason and there must be sufficient relevant documentation to support your appeal. So what happens after we receive an appeal? So, we're going to acknowledge the receipt of your appeal submission within 2 business days, so we've received it. Like I said, our goal is to review it in a fair and consistent and transparent manner, and we'll be looking at all situations individually based on the information you provide. So just make sure you submit all of those documentation to validate your appeal. And all decisions will be in line with provincial and regional policy. And then once we review the appeal, if there is a funding adjustment, you can expect to see that at the next scheduled payment date, pending sort of the timing and the payment cutoff dates. And so I'm going to turn it back to Olivia. She's going to take you through some next steps.
It would be helpful if I unmuted myself. Sorry about that. Thank you, Debbie. So what can we expect in the next couple of months? So in July, you're going to get a memo. And that memo, you will know, okay, am I on that general pathway or am I on the provisional pathway? In a way, you should kind of be able to figure it out because depending on what you submitted, if you submitted either fully spent or spending above your allocation, then that means you're most likely in the general. If you submitted underspending of more than $5,000, then you're in that provisional. So you can kind of guess which pathway you're going to fall in. So then after you reissue those specific memos, so you have confirmation, each UIS are going to reach out to you, just see if you got any questions or, where to kind of go from there, help you navigate the next couple steps, just touch base with you. We're also going to be updating our CWELC guidelines around that time as well. In late summer or to fall, right? Depending on how your organization falls against those 4 criteria that I outlined in terms of the order in which we're going to be reviewing that reconciliation information, you'll get your final update. And then we'll give you a memo. We'll upload it to GovGrants, and it'll have some of the more important details for you to hold on to. What is your ratio? Things of that nature. And you should be able, that'll be taking place over over like I said, late summer into the fall season. For that last group, right, of providers who have yet to submit or did not complete their reconciliation on time, then the process is the same. Just for you, that guys, or that group, your timing will be different, right? You'll be a little bit later in the year. You'll be more mid-fall, not early fall. Okay. And what you could do, in the meantime, while we are working through reconciliations and implementing this, is if you get any questions related to your submission, right, please try to respond as quickly as you can. That will just kind of allow us to finalize reconciliation submissions quicker, and then be able to move forward also with the implementation of the rolling top-up allocations quicker. If you haven't yet, please submit your audited financial statement for 2025 and your FAIR as soon as possible. Also, in terms of your future funding, you want to make sure that, again, you are maximizing your 2026 CWOC funding on eligible expenses. And we have a few tools that help you do that, right? We are coming to a midway point in the fiscal year. We're at the end of June. You should have a good look, or, get a report of your actuals, right? And kind of be able to predict, okay, where am I going to land at the end of the year if this trend continues, right? That's what that operating budget tool is really great to help you kind of highlight. And then from there, if you have a deficit, you have time to react. If you have a surplus, you got some money like that you haven't spent, you have time to plan, right? We also issued that capital replacement tool that helps you kind of look at some frequently replaceable items like appliances and other things that you'll need to kind of make sure you're keeping up to date. And we also have the staff wages tool to ensure you're distributing all the grants properly as well. So these are just other tools that you can use to help you really maximize your funding for 2026. And then with that, we are going to end the conversation. I'm going to pass it along to Michelle, and she's going to take us through any questions